A quick comment about the last video before we get going today. It concerns something I said during the last video on building the macro lighting cage, and it concerns the floor tiles from Home Depot. Contrary to what I said in that video, please don't take their floor tile samples for this project. It was pointed out to me very politely and very correctly by a viewer that those samples are needed by people who are shopping for flooring, and of course they are. And yes, I'd like to correct what I said, and please don't do that. I'll come up with something else that's better that we can use for that same function. But let's leave Home Depot's floor tiles alone. I apologize for leading you astray. Let's get on with today's video. Hello everybody, welcome back to Alan Wall's Photography. I am Alan, and if you survived all the way through to the end of the last video on building this thing, I'm proud of you. I couldn't survive all the way through the end of editing it. Today I'm going to show you how we set this thing up to use. So this is the macro photography cage, as I call it, that we made in the last video. It's a sturdy wooden base with a sled for our camera and focusing rail, with a cage made out of PVC and securely bolted to the base. It's an all-in-one macro photography setup that I have found over the years to be really convenient. And not just convenient, it's allowed me to do things I think I'd have had a hard time doing otherwise. So this is all about lighting. I came up with this thing because I was frustrated with having a full table full of wires and cables and lights falling over and bumping into one another. It was very hard to get predictable, repeatable results that way, and it was messy. And it just wasn't something that I look forward to doing, setting up a macro shoot. So I built this thing, and I have used one or another version of this for years now. So the purpose of today's video is I am going to show you what I use with this cage to make it maximally advantageous to me as a photographer. I am not going to be taking pictures tonight. I think I'll probably do a third video where we'll do a whole shoot and a specific setup. But I am not going to put you through another super long video. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. You can see where the camera is and how I've got it situated on this riser device. I am going to get rid of this now so that we have a clear field to work in. But you can see where the camera is positioned, or where it could be positioned if I was using a different lens setup. It allows me to put the whole rig anywhere I want it. But I'm going to get rid of it. In fact, I'm going to get rid of the whole thing just to clear some room away to show you what the device itself does. That's really all there is to disassembling it. So talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to go put this down somewhere safe. So by the time I finally quit with this building video, there were a couple of things that I hadn't finished. And I did them today, and they're just a few minutes work to do. The first is I attached a 12-inch LED. It's an under-counter light. It's meant to shine on things in your kitchen, but they're very light, they're very small, they run off the regular house voltage, and they have a nice switch. So these are the ones I use. They make them in all different sizes. This is not a photography light. We're not going to be using this to take any pictures, but between pictures, when I'm setting up my specimens, when I'm putting my lights in place, I like to have some immediate light without having to turn on room light. So that's what this is for. And I assure you, it does not get in the way of anything we're going to be doing. The second thing I added, and I've got some separate shots of this, is a power strip, which I have screwed into one of the uprights at the back of the cage. This is a particularly useful one because I have several LED lights that run off 5 volts, a USB type plug. And this new power strip cost about $20 at Walmart, has 2 USB sockets for charging up at the top, which I think can come in really handy, especially if I have a lot of lights going on. It also has 4 regular plugs. By the way, if you go to the previous video, the one on building this cage, I put in addition to the cut diagram for making this thing, I put a list of all the stuff you need to make it. And then I put a list of all the stuff, or some of the stuff, that you could use to use the device. So you might want to take a look at that. You can print it off directly from the link I put in the show notes. So there are basically 2 ways that I illuminate my subjects when I'm doing macro photography in the studio. One is with continuous lighting. One is with flash. And I, generally speaking, don't, though I have used studio flash. I usually find it more convenient to use speed lights. So I'm going to show you how each of those different techniques work, starting with the LEDs. Now, you've heard me rave about the Ikea headboard light. I think it's for reading with at night. I have a box of these things, as you well know, and they're very, very light. They're flexible, but they hold their position beautifully. But the best thing of all is they have a clamp that I think was designed to hold on to 1/2-inch PVC pipe. So to use one of these, I would simply clamp it, plug it in, and I would usually, I'm going to tell you in a minute about, well, I'll tell you about them now. Buy a strip of these cable tying Velcro thingamajigs. You can get a whole big roll of them for just a few dollars at Walmart. And what I'll do is I'll use these to hold my cables up out of the way to keep it really neat and tidy. So I'm just going to plug this into one of the available sockets, like so. I guess I'll use one of these things I just told you about it. They're so quick and easy to use for this purpose, for getting stuff out of the way on this rig. I love them. And then you turn it on, and you have the most flexible, aimable LED you could ever hope for. Now, they're not very bright, but when I'm doing this type of photography, I have these lights in close, and they do a really, really good job. I know that you're supposed to buy a $300 light thing to do good photography with, but I've been using these $11 Ikea lights for years and years, and nobody's ever complained. Anyway, The beauty of this rig is every upright and every bottom piece and all the top pieces are perfect grabbing places for these particular lights. They hold on an edge like this. You can use them on the bottom for uplighting. You can also use them on the bottom for top and side lighting. They are just immensely helpful and valuable. There's almost no lighting effect you can't get with these things. Now, this is just straight LED light that we're putting on our subject. So there are going to be times when you want to add modifiers, and I'm going to deal with modifiers after we've talked about the lights, because I've got so many tricks that I use to position modifiers in here. So if I'm not using these not particularly bright LEDs, sometimes I want to get the whole inside of the cage lit with a more diffuse light, but a brighter light, a whole kind of field effect. And when I'm doing that, I'll sometimes use these lights. They didn't come like this. They came. Somebody sent me a message the other day asking where I got these from. I found them on Amazon. They're just really cheap, super powerful LEDs. There's about 10 LED bulbs, and these things are bright. And I would never use these to directly put light on a subject. But what I love about these, and the reason I buy them and have them, is you can clip them outside of the tent and then use a sheet of some kind of diffusion material. Usually what I do is I have a roll of drafting tracing paper, and I will just put a double layer across one side. And then these lights can be positioned outside the cage. They also, the grip is really tight. This is just a little work clamp from the hardware store, which I've attached to a piece of heavy wire. And then I can position this light on the far side of a diffusion and it'll light the whole cage. This is probably more for low quality product photography, but there are ways that you can use this. Shining this light through a couple of layers of gel and a couple of layers of tracing paper can give a really, really cool lighting effect. It's like your insects at the disco. But they're the two main lights that I use. But I also have tons of little LED flashlights of different powers or of different brightnesses, and they're small and they clip. They'll clip anywhere onto this frame using just a simple super clamp. I'll show you a super clamp in a minute. They're all tied up with things I'm going to show you, but a super clamp is the way to attach stuff to this. You can attach anything to it, and flashlights simply take two super clamps screwed to one another. One clamps onto the rig, one clamps onto the flashlight, and you position it wherever you want it. So for tiny spots of light, sometimes I'll put a kind of a miniature snoot made out of aluminium foil and just use that to direct a point of light to a compound eye or something like that. So that's another way that you can add creative lighting is with flashlights. So that's really all there is to taking pictures with individual lights. because you just keep adding them until you get the effects you want. Sometimes I'll have two lights coming from below, and I'll have one from behind, two from the side, all with these little Ikea lights. And you can literally make the most subtle changes just by moving them one at a time. So that's all there is to the direct lighting. Every now and again, if I want to soften a light, I'll use a flash modifier. I've got these terribly inexpensive things that go on the top of a flash to direct the light downward. These actually work pretty well on an LED as well. But I wouldn't use it on the high-powered LED because that thing gets hot. And I have a feeling these are not fireproof. So before I start adding flash to this and cluttering the scene up a little bit, I want to show you just a couple of things that I do to position my subjects. I explained about the lab lifter, and I put the name of this thing in the show notes from the last video. But this is a great way to position your stage. And then I'll put usually a block of blue tack or some other heavy, dense material, and I'll put a pin in that, and I'll use the pin to hold the leaf for the insect or whatever it is I'm shooting. Normally, because this is a stainless steel surface and pretty reflective, when I'm using this and I get it positioned at the height I want, I'll drape this whole thing in a piece of black fabric, just to keep reflections from bouncing around. And I use this a lot of the time, but I don't use it all of the time because I have a secret weapon that I absolutely love. This thing is called quad hands, presumably because it has 4 hands on it. This is one of those devices that computer people use to hold their circuit boards while they do things to their circuit boards, I guess. I don't use it for that. I use it for about everything else under the sun. This is magic for macro photography in a setting like this. And what I do is I just position it at you'll remember I marked the board 10 inches from the back, and that's normally where I position my subject. But putting this thing right over that gives me 4 fantastically flexible arms that I can position anywhere I want to hold a reflector. It's literally that easy to add a reflector. I have a mirror, a small round mirror that I couldn't find. I'll look for it again in a minute, but it's on a long bendy arm, and I've modified that so that I can clamp it to these bars, and that'll allow me to cast an even smaller reflection into parts of my subject if I want to. This is perfect. This is made for anything flexible that you can attach to it. So I would use it for reflectors. I recommend these envelope liners. Why anybody would want to line the inside of their envelope is completely beyond me. But yeah, these things are great. You can use the whole piece, or you can cut them up into little pieces depending on what you need. And they're $1 for 20 of them. Brilliant. I keep a stack of these sheets of polycarbonate without the wrapping skin on them for adding specific effects to my lighting. Oftentimes, when I'm doing continuous lighting, I'll put a single sheet of tracing paper over my polycarbonate sheet, clip it in place I use these tiny little clamps, but you can literally use anything. You can use a piece of sticky tape. And now you can position this in front of any light that you want to, and not have to worry about it sagging because it doesn't have structure. So I use these polycarbonate sheets as structure for gels, for diffusion material, for anything I want. And I have several of them that I've painted in different colors that I also use as reflectors. And I showed you a few weeks ago the cards that I buy, the highly glossy metallic cards. They're also useful. You can cut a small piece, position it on one of these arms, and Bob's your uncle. Now, I will also use this with my lab lifter because the lab lifter fits on it perfectly and doesn't move. It's got sticky feet. So I can now have control over moving the base up and down as well as using the arms to do whatever I want to do. These arms are good for holding specimens. They're good for holding a piece of foreground interest like a leaf or some moss. The sky is the limit. I mean, it's the only thing that'll stop you finding things to do with these arms is a lack of imagination. So this thing is wonderful. I highly recommend you get your hands on one. I've never tried any other brands, but yeah, I probably never will because I bought this one and I love it. One thing I didn't mention, you can unscrew the base of this. It's just got one big screw that goes up into the bendy arm, and you could very easily drill some holes in your base and position your bendy arm semi-permanently on the base if you found you were using it all the time in a particular position. Worth thinking about. All right, so let's talk about flash. Now, like I said, generally speaking, for macro photography, using studio flashes, the big lights, there's very little time I do that, except maybe if I have a big softbox over the top of this thing pointing straight down to give me that whole field light. Sometimes that I'll do, but most of the time I'm working with speed lights. The things I called speed lamps in the last video. I was so tired when I was doing that. Anyway, I have positioned up to 10 speed lights on this thing before, and I don't see any reason why you couldn't get 20 if you wanted to. I can't imagine why you would. But let me show you how I attach speed lights and how flexible that solution is. I'll start with the simplest way. This is a bog standard, inexpensive Godox flash, the same kind I use for everything. This is either a small rig or a cam vate. I put the cam vate in the parts list because they're crazy inexpensive. These things are as good as any super clamp I've ever used, and they're $10.99 for two. So that's unbeatable. The Manfrotto ones are $23 or something a piece. And what I love about these ones is they have holes on the sides as well as on the back. So it gives you multiple mounting options. So if you're going to be using flash, there are several ways that you can attach your flash to this clamp. And one way is to just use the foot that comes with your flash, you know, the star-shaped thing or the H-shaped thing. You can put the cold shoe into that, and it's got a hole in the bottom of it that you can screw a bolt into. I don't like having those extra legs sitting around, so I just bought a box of cold shoes. These are metal cold shoes. They have no connections, no electrical anything in them. and you simply slide your flash onto it and tighten it down. I think I loosened it down. Anyway, that's good enough. And then you have a 1/4 inch screw to attach it to your clamp. I can't get this thing out. I'll need pliers, but no, I've got one here. There's a place on Amazon that you can buy all of this connection stuff for lighting, and it works for microphones and a bunch of things. A big bag of it for $10 or so. But this is one of these that basically has a screw on both ends and a little knurled thing in the middle. So what I will do is I'll just screw the super clamp directly into the now attached speed light, like so, and attach it anywhere you want it. It will hold completely steady anywhere on this rig. So you can use it for like a hair light, a backlight. You can use it for lighting from above. It'll clamp onto the front. It'll clamp on even with this light here because there's plenty of room. You can even clamp at the bottom of the setup, like so that you can have your flash coming up the way. And that's really the magic of this thing, to be honest. It's the fact that you can position a bewildering number of flashes, all with different modifiers. I love to use grids sometimes to narrow the beam of light, and these things attach with a strip of Velcro, literally like that. And yeah, that gives you one way to modify the light. Another thing that I use all the time are these little tiny 5 by 6 inch soft boxes. I don't know who makes, Altura makes them. And they're anywhere from $12 to $14, but they have a deal. I can't remember the shop that had the deal, but you can buy 3 of them for not much more than you'd pay for one of them, and 3 different sizes. So these are fantastic. And again, I've got a different kind of attachment here. I just wanted to show you another one that I like. This is something I use for my with my flash diffuser on camera, the thing we built earlier. It's a very simple piece. It's a cold shoe with a screw that's captive in the holder here. So again, all you have to do is put the hot shoe on, bam, tighten it down like so, screw it into any part of your super clamp that you want to, the side, the back, the top, and then bolt it in, and you're good to go. You're probably figuring out that you should invest in these things. This is another cam vate. There's I also use one by Small Rig, which is, as far as I can tell, identical, but more expensive. But you're going to need, if you're going to do this, and if you're going to use this, and you're going to use flash, I strongly recommend you buy a half a dozen of these things, because I use these all day long, every day. All of my audio visual stuff is attached using those. All right, so how about something different? This is one of my favorite things to do. with my flash cage. I came up with this thing because I was having trouble getting the kind of underlighting that I was looking for. I didn't have all the equipment I needed, but I remembered that I had a ring flash. This is a pretty good ring flash. It's a Viltrox. It has two lights, one on each side, so that you can adjust the ratio of light intensity. But what I came up with, and I'll show you how I use it. I'll take it all apart just so you can see exactly what it is I'm talking about here. I should have done this before we started. It's just been one of those days. All right. Sorry, this is, I do this all the time. I come up with bizarre combinations of stuff, and some of it really works. So this thing is made to fit on the lens, the front of your lens, with an adapter. So this pops into your hot shoe, this goes on the front of your lens, and you're good to go. It's a handy flash. Some people don't like the semicircular highlights in eyes. I actually like them. I think they're cool. But yeah, some people can't deal with that, so they don't use this. But what I found to use this for is altogether different. So I'll put a cold shoe directly onto the flash itself, and then I'll screw another one of those double-ended. These have probably got names, but I don't know what the name is. Screw one of them in there, and then I will attach, if I can find the attachment point, I'll attach this flash directly to the super clamp. I need to do this the other way around. So I have a super clamp that you can buy with an articulating arm like this. They make them longer than this, which may come in useful for something that you're shooting. But this is just one of those super clamps on this end, screwed directly onto the articulating arm. On the other end, we'll get to the other end in a minute, I will screw a cold shoe directly into the clamp. See, I've used both of the screw points at the back. Then I can stick the body of the flash and tighten it, like so. And this is where it gets clever. So these articulating arms have a groove at one end, and it's good to use that groove to get this arm out of the way of the flash body. But what I will do is I will take a second super clamp and I will attach that to the other end of the articulating arm. At the back is the way I like to do it for this. So we've got basically an articulating arm with clamps on either end, and in one of the holes on the articulating arm I've got the flash. I take this ring flash and position it on this wedge at the bottom. Don't over tighten this, just softly. And now I can take this clamp, I can attach the clamp to any one of the bars on the frame, and then I can position the flash underneath my subject. like this. I hope you can see that. What this allows me to do then is create this very unique uplight, which can be brighter in the front, a little dimmer at the back. I can have my my specimen suspended here in the middle using this thing again, or using a long pin from below, doesn't matter. And then I can do all of my other lighting above this. But this is fantastic, and it allows you to do some really creative things. And if you don't want to use it like that, you can also use it above, because again, you have absolute freedom to move this anywhere you want in the rig, and it will stay solid. So that's another one of the ways you can make use of this thing. One other thing, these thingies are even cheaper than super clamps. Oh. It's a clamp that has a rubbery grip inside. It has a cold shoe on the bottom. This is made for securing an extra flash to a piece of studio equipment so that you can get some creative lighting. But it is perfect for this. It is perfect for this flash tent because it also holds the flash completely secure and allows you to change the position of the flash head, clip it anywhere you want in the cage. And these things really are cheap. I have a box of these. Oh, this is what I was going to show you about using the foot of the flash to connect a super clamp to. There's a brass fitting on the inside, a little hole that this will screw directly into. So as you can see, the sky's the limit. There is almost nothing you can't do with this. And in addition to using these top bars to hang diffusion material, they're also perfect if you hang on the inside for hanging a creative backdrop or some material or paper on the inside of any of these surfaces. And that is very, very useful too. Sometimes I'll put a piece of black velvet in the back if I'm trying to get a real dark field type shot, and it'll absorb all the extra light beautifully. Even if I have flashes right at the front and pointing back, that velvet really, really helps. So it really is up to your imagination how you use this thing. And it doesn't make it possible for you to do anything that you couldn't do the normal way. But it would just be a big pain and a big mess to do it. With this, it is literally a matter of clamping the flashes on and starting to take pictures. There is no setup, there's no figuring things out, because after you've used this a couple of times, you'll know exactly what power settings you need to use with all your flashes. By the way, if you're doing something like this, it's a good idea to use the same brand of flash, the same model of flash, just to avoid incompatibilities with the timing of them mainly. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you're as excited about this device as I am. So if you haven't built one of these yet, you need to get building. It's not expensive, it is not difficult to make, and once you have one, you'll wonder how you ever did macro photography without one. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm always happy to talk to you, and if I wasn't clear about something here, just let me know. So check out the website if you haven't, alanwallsphotography.com. Go back and check out some of the old blog posts. I was looking at them the other day, and they're really quite good. They're written, they're not videos, but they've got lots of good pictures in them, and they're fun to read. They were fun for me to read anyway. I'd forgotten all about writing them. Also, while you're there, drop by wristwrap.com, no W at the front, and be the purchaser of the 5th bracelet, and you get some kind of a prize. Yeah, you get a bracelet. Anyway, I'll be back in a few days with something else. So until I see you again, please stay safe, have fun, and do something nice for somebody. I'll see you in a few days. Take care.